Okay, let's dive into this. Japan is looking at something huge right now, a proposal to make education mandatory for every single child, not starting in elementary school, but starting at just 3 years old. And we're not talking about a minor tweak here. This is a complete rethink of when a child's formal education should even begin.
And let me tell you, this one question has set off a massive, passionate national debate. You've got people on one side who see it as absolutely essential for the nation's future, and on the other side, people who think it's a dangerous overstep. It's really a classic battle of big, competing ideas.
So, what are we actually talking about here? Well, the proposal, which is being pushed by the People's Democratic Party, wants to drop the starting age for compulsory education all the way down to 3. The main goal? To lift the quality of early childhood education for everyone, right across the country.
All right, so let's start with the for side. Why are people so passionate about making this happen? Well, for supporters, this is a seriously powerful tool for social progress.
You see, their argument is really built on 4 big pillars. First, it guarantees a high standard of education for every child, no matter where they live or what their family's like. Second, it helps close that opportunity gap that can start so early in life. Third, it's a huge support for working parents, which could ease the childcare burden and maybe, just maybe, help with the low birth rate. And finally, it's an investment in a smarter, more skilled workforce down the road.
And this quote, man, it just nails the core philosophy on the pro side. For them, this whole thing is fundamentally about fairness. It's about making sure a kid's future isn't decided by their parents' bank account or zip code, but by their own unique potential.
And they're not just talking philosophy. They're bringing the economic receipts. Supporters love to point to OECD data that shows an incredible return on investment. The research suggests that for every single dollar you put into high-quality early childhood education, society gets a whopping $7 back in the long run. We're talking increased productivity, lower social costs, the whole deal.
Okay, but as you can probably guess, for every strong argument in favor, there's an equally passionate one against it. The other side sees this proposal not as an investment, but as a really serious threat.
And their concerns are just as serious. They're worried that making it mandatory will just create a standardized, one-size-fits-all education that kills creativity. They argue it steps on the basic right of a family to choose what's best for their own child. And then there are the practical questions. I mean, who is going to pay for all of this? And where are we going to find the teachers when there's already a shortage?
And this right here, this captures the heart of their argument. For this side, the most important values are a family's independence and the diversity of education. They believe Japan's real strength is in its variety of approaches, Montessori, Steiner, play-based learning, and that forcing everybody into one single system would be a massive loss for the country.
And it's not just a philosophical thing for them either. They're pointing to other countries as cautionary tales. A big one they bring up is France, which already has mandatory education from age 3. Critics over there say the policy has actually made teaching more rigid and standardized, which is the exact opposite of what you want for little kids.
Okay, so when you strip everything else away, this entire really complex debate, it boils down to 3 key areas of conflict, 3 core battlegrounds. Let's break them down. So, battleground number 1. What's this actually going to do to the quality of education? Is this going to lift every child up, or is it just going to drag everyone into a kind of boring, mediocre middle?
On one hand, the pro side says, look, this sets a crucial minimum standard of quality, because right now the quality can be all over the place depending on where you live. This policy, they argue, makes sure no kid gets left behind. But the con side just isn't buying it. They fire back that a national standard is just a fancy term for a rigid, cookie-cutter curriculum that totally ignores that every 3-year-old develops at their own pace.
All right, next up is the big one. This gets right to the philosophical heart of the whole thing. And it really centers on a fundamental question of rights. Who gets to be the main decision-maker here, the government or the family?
The pro side frames this as an issue of equality, plain and simple. They believe every child has a right to a great education, and that right shouldn't depend on their family's money or anything else. But the con side, they see it completely differently. For them, it's about freedom. They believe every family has the right to choose an education that matches their values, whether that's an alternative school or even just keeping their kid at home a bit longer.
And you knew this was coming, right? The final battleground, like with so many big ideas, it all comes down to the money. Is this a brilliant, forward-thinking investment in Japan's future, or is it a crazy expensive plan that the country just can't afford?
So you've got one side framing this as a long-term win, pointing to that 7-to-1 return on investment. They say it's not a cost, it's an investment. But the other side is shouting about the very real, very immediate pain. They're pointing to an initial price tag in the trillions of yen for new buildings and more teachers. A burden, they say, would mean painful tax hikes or cuts to other vital services.
And look, this isn't just talk. We're seeing real proposals on how to pay for this. Supporters are floating ideas like corporate tax reform or issuing special education bonds. But opponents? They warn the reality would be much, much tougher, probably leading to a deeply unpopular consumption tax hike or, even worse, cuts to social welfare for the elderly, essentially pitting generations against each other.
So, okay, we've heard both sides, right? They're passionate, they've got good points. What are we supposed to take away from all this?
Well, the first thing to realize is that this is so much bigger than just a debate about schools. This is a debate that forces Japan to ask itself what kind of society it wants to be. Is the #1 priority to build a society that guarantees equality and opportunity for all, even if that means a little less individual choice? Or is it to build one that fiercely protects a family's freedom, even if that means bigger differences in how kids start out in life?
At the end of the day, the entire debate really hangs on this one incredibly tough question. It puts two deeply held, very positive values directly against each other, and there is no easy answer. The choice that Japan makes here will say a whole lot about the kind of future it wants to build for its next generation.